All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today, we're going to go back to the well and hang out with my old buddy, Greg Reinhard, GRB Academy, GRB Baseball, and guest of the pod on June 5th, 2019. If you're tuning into this one, this is being recorded in March of 2024. So it's been a long, long time. Greg, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You got it. Right out the gate, I'm gonna give people a lot of links here in a second, but I want coaches, parents, players, whoever's listening, to get an idea. If they want to know a little bit about your background and about just GRB in general, they can go listen to playinschool.com/Reinhard. That's REINHARD. They can go there. Today's conversation is going to be, I would say, a departure from my normal sort of high-level conversation with those standard questions I like to ask people. Today, instead, I really want to try to pull out of Greg a master class, if you will, a mini TED Talk, if you will, on sort of setting up and running a charitable foundation. So this is really going to be a talk on fundraising, on foundations, on charitable giving. The motivation for this came just a few weeks ago. I saw Greg tweet out, when I saw it, I think was early February, and he has launched a foundation. It's called the Reinhard Family Foundation. So you can go over to Twitter. Follow Greg there. Here's some links, and I'm going to put all this in the show notes. At Greg Reinhard 19 is his personal Twitter. At Reinhard Family is the foundation. A couple more links. GRBacademy.com will take you to all things GRB. At GRB Academy is the Twitter, and then the final one, at least for now, reinhardfamilyfoundation.org will get you over there. So the reason I'm doing this is I know that there's probably somebody else out there who's listening to this who's trying to come up with ways to give back to the community, to help their players that are maybe a little less fortunate than the average travel ball family is. So when I saw this, I immediately said, let's get Greg back on. So Greg, do you think this is a topic that we can knock out in 30 to 45 minutes, at least at a high level?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely, I do.
All right. So the first question is, like, how long ago did this idea pop into your head, and like, how do you go from idea to a tweet on February 7th announcing it? Let's just give me those backgrounds.
Sure. So first, I think everyone probably knows I'm really good at surrounding myself with really good people all the time, whether it's our guys at GRB, but in this case, I've had some really great lawyers and some really great accountants, and I've always put myself around some really good small business owners, and I like to ask a lot of questions, mainly the question of why. So if the origin of this really was almost 2013, I think, was the year. I had drinks with my then lawyer. She has now got a really cool job. But she thought that this was something that had to happen at some point in time, and I think the original name of it was Extra Innings Inc. But it was creating a foundation, that could really help kids inside sports, because travel sports are somewhat exclusive and can block out some different financial classes, and there's always people, in good situations or in bad situations. So I had the paperwork then. I would say I was a little bit distracted or busy growing GRB, where I never really got it launched, or there was never really like a linchpin moment where I was like, boy, here's an amount of money that can really get this moving, or here's this, this asset that can really get this off the ground. and up until that point, like, we've had some special situations where, myself or even Max Cordio, a partner here at GRB, like, we've just written a check for the kid if it's really a bad situation. But generally, we've always made everyone pay at GRB. Like, that's just how it's been, because you and I've discussed this. Like, there needs to be some skin in the game or some dedication to it. So as far back as then we were thinking about it, I will quickly zoom forward. I tried to buy a piece of land probably in 2015 from a guy named Dwight Ziegler. And we got all the way to the end on that land, and then the soil wouldn't support the building we were building, so we built it, a quarter mile down the road where the current GRB is. And Dwight is a successful person. He's a kind-hearted person. And at some point beyond there, he was like, hey, I want to build a field, kind of like a legacy thing. I love DeForest and Windsor. I grew up here. And I think sports are super important. He's like, it's where you learn to win and lose, which, is really like life. And so he wanted to design this field, and I put in a little bit of time helping him and the architect design it and talking through it. And then COVID happened, right? Which was right after we talked the last time. And so it kind of disappeared, the project did, but I knew there was an amount of land set aside. And, fast forward to, I guess, maybe 22 or 2021, like, all of a sudden there's dirt moving. So I phoned Dwight and found out his plans. It was originally going to run to some different little leagues, and I think a couple of them financially balked at maybe some of the improvements that had to happen or how to keep it running or the upkeep. And this field, by the way, is less than a quarter mile from GRB. I shouldn't say it, less than a half mile from GRB. So that was my linchpin moment to be like, here's an asset. It has to be donated to a nonprofit. We already know we want to do this. This provides something that we can do to the community. We will create rent revenue on it, which will help not only take care of the field, but help fund the scholarship program. And from there, it was full speed. And I've got a lot of people in town that do really good things for their jobs or really believe in this. And so we're creating a really cool board that will help this really be long lasting and strong. So,
all right, that's a pretty good high level background. Something like this is not happening overnight. 9 years from start to finish, roughly, or really from idea to start. I should say, not start to finish. So now the field is playable.
Field is playable. It's turf infield. It is the donation value was $4.1 million. It is right on a major road here in DeForest, Windsor, just north of Madison, Wisconsin, where our location is. So it is very visible. We have already gotten 3 high schools to sign over from their high school fields to play at this field. It's their permanent home for this year, and I think it looks long-term. So we will be full here in about a couple weeks. And we're scrambling, right? Like, we are, we got more bleachers coming in. After the field was built, Dwight decided to build, a really big, it's well over $400,000 press box with bathrooms and concession stand and storage. And we just built a batter's eye out there, and we got a scoreboard coming late. And we're going to build covered cages like what you see down in Florida and in the really cool big league parks. We're going to build one of those because this for us is, something that's really cool. So it's playable, and it's going to go quickly.
You got three high schools that maybe I would say, I'm guessing, had average to poor fields. We're like, hey, we could play there. And
I went into this knowing we were going to chase some high schools, and the ones that I thought were eligible to come over here are the ones coming. And then, I've got some friends that coach in high school baseball. They're coming to do a few games to check it out. And, the University of Wisconsin club baseball team, since I don't know, I don't want to talk about it, but the University of Wisconsin doesn't have baseball, but they have a club team, and they will be playing at the complex a few times, some home talent teams. Obviously, GRB will be using it in the summer, so it's great.
Do you anticipate any summer tournaments over there?
Well, we already run 3 tournaments for GRB, and the 14U division we will play there, which will free up some space at the other spot. So, yeah, there's going to be some tournament stuff out there. It is just one field, and it's a college level field, right? It's 335 down the lines, 375 or 325 down the lines, 375 to the gaps, and 395 to center. So this is a very playable, I've been in some talks with some colleges about conference tournaments moving there. So,
oh man, that'd be cool. So the field is sort of like that physical piece of this foundation, right? That's
correct.
That's where you're going to see kids out there having fun, playing ball, just the normal camaraderie, competition, like you said before, learning to lose, learning to win. But I want to talk about like the other side, the money side a little bit. Can you give me pretend I'm 5 years old, because that's what it's going to take to explain it to me. Walk me through sort of that like high level money talk, how you're going to leverage this to help the kid down the street. Maybe the kid who's in your facility already, maybe a kid who has nothing to do with baseball.
Sure. So, right, the facility, right, is the driver, is the linchpin, it's the physical thing you see. There's almost 2 sides to this foundation. One, you have this opportunity for kids to play at a great place and to be the driver. The second piece is the scholarship fund, which I think is important, and I want to point out right away, like, this isn't a scholarship fund for just GRB. There will be GRB kids that will apply for sure, and some may be selected. But this is more like Southern Wisconsin, all sports, like kids who want to be in athletics and maybe struggle to tackle some of the fees that come with it. And I think that's important, because I think there's a line that some people, maybe don't understand, be like, oh, Greg is just setting this up just for GRB, and all the money they raise from this foundation is going to funnel GRB. That couldn't be further from the truth. This is really about sports in general in the area. And how do you fund one of those, right? Because in a typical foundation, you would want to create some nest egg of money that can either run into an investment portfolio or, be a high yield savings account or a mix of both, and create this income each year off of this amount of money. And that allows us to kind of be a perpetuity or a long-term, something that pays long-term, right? Very simple thought. If you had $1 million and you could average 10% return on it per year, if it's considered a public charity, a 501c9, which is maybe a little bit different than a 501c3 personal foundation or private foundation, the private foundation might get taxed 2% only on those investment gains. The charity would get taxed 0%. But you would essentially have $100,000 to give away to youth athletes every year. And that's kind of our other side of the organization, is how do we create that nest egg that can really create, this is how big corporations are doing it in some sense, right? Like these huge foundations that have $200 million, they're kicking out $20 million a year. And that's what's going to fund a lot of these huge, I'm sure Major League Baseball does it, right? Like the RBI programs, like same thing. So that is the money side, the other side. And then how do you get to, like, who is the money going to, I think is always a question. And, in order to get, nonprofit and public charity status, you really have to define that. And when we sent in our application, like, we reviewed tons of scholarship plans, and you need to put some determining factors, whether that's, some people just straight up ask families how much they make per year, free and reduced lunch, sometimes that's a qualifier. There could be partial qualifiers. So, like, those are all things that you have to take into account, because this can't just be something where some family that makes $200,000 says they can't afford to play somewhere, play hockey, and then they get money. Like, you really want to do this right and make sure it goes to the actual cause that you want it to do and the actual people you want to target and the actual kids who need it.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were just talking about the sort of the bad taste that leaves in your mouth when you see the family who, says they need a helping hand, but then they roll into the field with a Suburban. And you're like, really?
Right.
You really? Mm-hmm.
Right.
Brand new Tahoe. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think so, buddy. So yeah, the figuring out how to disperse the money is a full-time job.
Right, and I don't want that. That won't be me, right? Because
you've already got like 6 full-time jobs.
I certainly am going to be super active. Like, this is like a really cool project my wife and I and others are taking on, and the board we're creating, the advisory board, and someone has a really great group of people, and I'm really excited about it. I think you need to separate, the approval process for the money from yourself. Like, even though, it's called the Reinhard Family Foundation, and we're going to have a bunch of skin in the game and time in the game and money in the game, I think then when it hands out, you don't want that on your plate fully. You want a group of people who are very smart, people, and to make a lot of decisions in a voting setting or something like that. That way people aren't pointing the finger at you like you didn't fund us, or, that's just not something, I think it needs to be a bigger group of people that make these decisions, which is kind of how I've always done all of our businesses. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you started this conversation by saying, one of your strengths is surrounding yourself with smart people, good people, and this is no different. Why would you do something different here? Bring in somebody who has experience in this world and has the ability to, like you said, create a little bit of separation, eliminate a little bit of the emotion. There's still, I think there's probably is going to be emotion just inherently built into this thing, because the whole thing is like trying to help people. There's emotion there. What are you mentioned the number $1 million a little bit ago, just as an example for easy math for us who are slow with numbers. Would you say is that like a pretty good target number for what you're trying to do, or are you thinking bigger, or you think it's smaller? Or was that just a round number for easy math? Like, what's your yardstick here? What's your what is there like a goal number just to have this thing self-sustain for forever?
I don't know. There's a goal number. I think the words that have come out of my mouth are like, man, if I could hustle this and find the right people and businesses and foundations to help, if you could run this to a $500,000 number, like you could probably really easily get a 6% return and give away $30,000 a year as a starting point. I do believe we'll grow into this. We have been moving on it. We have some things to sell out there, right? The scoreboard rights, the back of the batter's eye that faces Highway 51, which has really good traffic count, right? That's like a built-in billboard. Yeah. The covered cages, the naming rights on those, and then general signage and gifts. Like people have given, people from our program have stepped up right away. Past players, that understand, one, their kid maybe benefited from our program, and they're successful and can give something, or people that are currently in our program that understand their kid's going to be at this ballpark for a long time, hopefully. So, yeah. But yeah, I think, I don't think there's like a cap where you're like, let's just get to 500,000. The more you can put into this and the more you can grow over the years, like the more you can help. And I think sometimes that takes a lot of work, and sometimes it takes getting lucky. Like you might bump into someone, who's like, hey, I want to be a big person behind this to make this successful. I believe in it. And I think sometimes that's a thing. So I hope it's a mix of both, honestly. It's going to be tough, and I'm okay for the challenge. I also hope like we get lucky along the way a little bit.
Yeah, if anybody's listening to this and you want to, check out some of the things they've got set up. If you go to the ReinhardFamilyFoundation.org and then you click on you click around a little bit, you'll find the founding sponsorship page and scroll down, and you've got some suggested donations here that get you something like a wall plaque displayed on the field for $250. $500 gets you something similar, right? There's some different levels there where you get your name engraved. I've seen examples where I've seen examples similar to that where they'll put your name on a brick, right? And you'll do a brick walkway or a brick wall with names on it. And you just imagine an opportunity where, you come and bring your kid and go, hey, check it out. Your name's on the wall here. But then I also scroll down and I see bigger numbers for scoreboard, batting cage sponsorship. That's awesome. This sort of segues me to this other thought, and I've said it on this podcast before. Like, I think just generally in travel baseball, if we wanted to cover the cost for every kid within an organization, I think we could. And I think you do that by hiring a professional fundraiser, somebody who's going to work the phones, somebody who's going to set up fundraising events like like a black tie type of thing with with the auctions and set up those golf events. The tricky part for me, and I'd love to get your. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No. You finish, and then I have a direction that I think is important to understand about what you're saying. And
I was going to say the tricky part in my head is, and you've already alluded to it before, is if we make everything free for everybody, which is a noble cause, noble idea, I think it removes such important skin in the game for many of the families that creates this whole other sort of can of worms, this increased level of entitlement, perhaps this detachment, right? When a family has skin in the game, they feel, hey, I'm a part of this thing. So anyway, that's sort of my take on like. So the question is that a path that we want to go down from a high level, like just just travel organization down the street from me? They don't have a field, but they could go hire a professional fundraiser. Like, is that asking for trouble?
Well, I think all right. First thing I would say is this is like, I personally would never want everything to be free for anyone in travel baseball. Maybe other sports, I don't know, but inside the world that I currently live in, there are programs that do that. There are national programs that do that. We're well aware of all of them. They call themselves national programs, just whatever. But I would just say the downfall of that is there is no buy-in from the player. Athletics needs to be we're going down a scary path with athletics, and I won't get too far into this, but like you see the college stuff is going bonkers. People are paying kids and families to fly and play for them because of some weird ego thing to win a national title at a perfect game event or a PBR event. And like, that has never been, my direction. Like, I want my thing is how many kids can we put in college? How many of those kids are here all the time that we develop? And some of these places, I call them rent a player. They're free. Yeah. They're paying to rent that player, and they think it represents their brand. And then they tweet about, oh, we have, 55 draft picks. Yeah, they played in their uniform. That's fine. But there's no personal buy-in with those kids. And that's what, if you're really looking to mentor the next generation of athletics and people, like, that's what you need. The rent-a-player stuff is crazy. So I don't believe in the free everything.
Yeah.
That being said,
to be clear, I don't either. To be clear,
right. And I don't want to. I'm not calling anyone out because if I did, I would name them all. But anyways, the thing that I think people is important is like, there is a dedicated, youth sports teams can be a dedicated nonprofit. Like someone could go fundraise for their full program. When I first started GRB, it was actually called the Wisconsin River Captain. It was a 501c3, and we had people donate to it. Now my world changed when I realized we're in Wisconsin and we need to have a building, and like, you know, we're going to make, you know, revenue in a lot of different areas that probably don't match a nonprofit revenue creating thought. So we switched because like someone has to sign their name on a line at a bank that says we're willing to take this loan, and it's generally not nonprofits, right? There needs to be someone that is like, yeah, you can take everything from my life if I mess this up, or a couple people, right, in our case. So I shifted out of that, but nonprofits, certainly there is a special designation for travel sports teams that is a nonprofit. We do not operate that way, mainly because of the building and everything. In terms of you mentioned like having events or hosting events and permanent fundraising, like, you know, my wife has experience doing that. She's worked for a very large nonprofit in the past and was their events coordinator. I haven't given her that job designation yet because I haven't asked her about it. But like, I think, you know, we used to host an event for GRB all the time where we'd bring in a guest speaker. We've had some really good agents and college coaches come in and talk. And I won't mention his name, but my pro roommate who's a GM, you know, if you're listening, like, I'd love for you to be the first speaker. Like, I do want to do something, and I think I've always in my brain so far has thought like one night in baseball in Wisconsin, like a host of a fundraising dinner where you bring in a really good speaker that can speak not just on his world, but also the full process about kids going from start to finish and what their lives look like. And I'm not just saying him, I'm saying there's a lot of really talented people that can give insight, college coaches, agents, you know, people who are in pro baseball, people who are maybe in a different industry. And I do think that will be, you know, part of what we hopefully get to in the future. I mean, everyone does a golf outing. We may do that, but I would really like to have something where people can come and learn and hear a really good speaker and have a good meal, and it goes to a really good cause. So I think you're right. Like, someone could hire a full-time fundraiser and do this. I think they create more problems for themselves, though. And this is why I've kept it out of GRB. We've never ran fundraisers or anything. You know, this is why it will be separate, because I don't think it can just go to fund your own program. And I don't think it's healthy to just fund your own program, but more about improving just athletics in general and people in general is probably the path that this foundation will go down.
Yeah, for sure. Do you ever wish you had? I mean, what you've done, it feels like big, right? It feels big, right? And the stars aligned. You had your friend hook you up with the space for this field, and do that as a you know, charitable donation so you can get this thing off the ground. But let me rephrase. Is there a way, some guys listening, how do you do this on a smaller scale without, you know, the $4 million field? And, you know, how do you do this on a small scale so that you can start helping kids in your community one at a time?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, I didn't, but I had ideas on how, and I think there's a lot of people that do this. I think you see professional athletes do this. You know, they get a really good contract year and they create a private foundation. I think there are people inside travel sports that maybe make enough money to literally write a check to themselves, to their own foundation, and, you know, take the tax deduction against their business or against their personal stuff and start a foundation. I know of several really good athletes who in the past have a really good contract year, write a large lump sum to their own foundation to get it started, and then always give away the money from there. And that way you're not having to give away all the money from your personal, sorry, every year and dealing with the tax ramifications. It's a one-time tax deduction. You give the money, you get that deduction up front, and then when you give money away from there, it doesn't count in terms of taxable stuff, but it is doing what you wanted it to do. I mean, that's the way I think, that's maybe not in everyone's wheelhouse. I think you got to find really good people that believe in it. Make sure they're invested with board opportunities or, just ingrained in what you're doing to build this, to have them help you. Cause it's more than a one-person job to go out and try and fundraise. You'd have to know 1 million people on your own, and then convince all 1 million people in what you're doing. So it certainly takes more than one person.
A big takeaway for me as I listen to you is make sure you're checking in with your accountant and find a good accountant. Because
Correct.
Listen, yes, can you reach into your pocket and pay for something for somebody? Sure. Is that the most efficient way to help the people around you? Maybe not, right? So check in with the accountant, make sure you're doing things in a up and up way. Neither of us are accountants as far as I know, so there's no tax advice here, but yeah, check in with your accountant and start asking those questions. Cause I think it's, 9-10 years ago when you started thinking about this stuff, it doesn't just happen overnight. So begin asking questions so that when you're prepared to go big, you're not, what do they say? You're not caught with your pants down, so to speak, when the tide goes out.
And there, just for the record, there are a ton of programs that have, I shouldn't say travel programs, but when I was reviewing this, there's a ton of scholarship plans in place for different baseball programs and football programs and basketball programs, and they only pay players from their program. In terms of, I shouldn't say pay, I hate that word. They have scholarships for players that participate specifically in their program. So if someone's listening and they have a really good, soccer program or baseball program and they want to, combat this, they certainly could do it within the realm of their own program and their own players. That's just not something that I thought was right for our foundation and for GRB, especially with the growth of GRB. We have a couple different locations and territories, and I just don't know. That was just probably too much for me to fully wrap my head around in terms of, boy, this could get all over the place. So let's just make sure that this current setup, deals with youth players in southern Wisconsin in all sports.
Now, that's a baseball field. We're baseball guys, but you did mention sort of you want to be able to help all kids from different sports. Do you anticipate running soccer games out there or 7-on-7 football or anything like that on that field? Maybe different kids camps or anything like that?
I'm not fully sure of that yet. In the field, like I said, the field is just a driver a little bit on rent revenue, field rentals to kind of sustain the field and kind of give what's left over to the scholarship fund. I think really that scholarship fund will get funded, through personal or business donations, mainly at first to fill it up, and then we'll continue to keep building money through the rentals and stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't know that it's necessarily. I think the scholarship fund is fully separate from the field. They're both under the same entity, but yeah.
So theoretically, there's a kid down the street. He's playing hoops. He comes across your foundation. Mom and dad are short. They're having a tough year, and they, fill out an application. They're chosen. Your foundation could theoretically stroke a check to that basketball team or organization, cover mom and dad's cost. Is that the mechanics of it?
Yeah, we're going to have 2 different registration periods each year where people can apply, right? So if they go into knowing that they're playing travel basketball, they can apply, right? And we have these parameters outlined, to make sure that they financially, that you're not getting hoodwinked on someone telling you that they really need the money, but they don't. And then, when that happens, I think right now we have it outlined where tournament fees, or not, I'm going to say this, player fees, because some organizations have like a player fee and then you get a uniform fee and a tournament fee. Or sometimes, like our organization, we wrap all those fees into one. I think you could get a partial or a full. It just really depends on what the foundation creates in terms of money each year to give away. Right? I mean, year one we might only be able to give away $10,000 or $20,000. I don't know. But maybe one day we're giving away $400,000, and because we have this nest egg that we've built over the years, and at that point, like, you can do a lot of things, and you may even need to change the parameters based on how much you have to give away. I mean, there's some guidelines with 501c3s that determine what you have to give away each year based on the revenues and their returns. So, yeah, I mean, this could go in a lot of different directions, but ultimately it could be, kids in any sport, as long as they match the guidelines that are currently in place.
It really is exciting. It's such a cool way for you and your wife to, sort of, kind of cement your legacy in your community, to be honest with you, and hopefully help a lot of kids along the way. Listen, realistically, I think you've cemented your legacy in your community by running a for-profit business. Like you've provided a wonderful service for people in your community, like a lot of the people in the baseball world have. But this goes sort of a whole nother level. So kudos to you. And what we'll need to do is we'll need to check in and get an update, because this is brand new, just getting off the ground. Honestly, it wouldn't shock me if some random guy hears this. So I'm going to make sure I repeat. We'll put this, the conversation, and I'll put all the links at playinschool.com / let's go GRB / because we already used Reinhard on your first conversation. So go to playinschool.com /GRB. There you'll find the links to Reinhard Family Foundation. You'll be able to get in touch with Greg and the people, his wife, the other people who are helping running this thing. It wouldn't shock me if somebody strokes you, a $200 check here or $500 check there. I hope they do, but maybe we find somebody who wants their name on the batting cage or on the scoreboard. That the back of the scoreboard is a built-in billboard that faces a road with lots and lots of traffic through Madison, Wisconsin. This is cool, man. It's a lot of opportunities. The guy, I want to call him Zig Ziglar. He's not related to Zig, is he?
No, Dwight Ziegler. He's an older gentleman now, but he's been a huge supporter of DeForest and Windsor. Him and his wife Bonnie. I shouldn't just give it all to Dwight. Like, him and his wife have been very gracious, not just to me, but to everyone in the community and things they've done. They developed a lot of Windsor DeForest, and it's great.
That's super cool. I mean, congratulations on getting this all off the ground.
Thank you.
Is there any sort of words of wisdom to some guy who's maybe 5 years behind you, who this is rattling around in his head already? Like, you want to give that guy any pitfalls to avoid or tips to get this thing going a little more efficiently?
I mean, I think before you launch it, you need to be very sure that you can execute on it. I mean, even I, had questions about different times of this, like, man, this is going to take a lot of work, to take care of this field, which fortunately is by GRB. We have a really great staff of guys, and it helps having an outdoor field that's turf. But I think from the financial side, people need to need to make sure it's something that you have a big enough reach, enough people where you can consistently fund it. Because unless if you can just yourself, right? And I think that's a route that some people can go, but I certainly think there's, it takes a small army to make one of these really long-term successful, because you will incur a ton of fees to get it set up. I think the filing fee is $800, $900 alone. And then, you need to employ an accountant, because nonprofit laws, and maybe a lawyer are no joke. And you should run it correctly. Otherwise, you find your ass in hot water. I mean, honestly. So
yeah,
not good if you don't do it right.
The cool thing is, if you're running a facility or you've got a travel organization with a bunch of kids in there, guess what? Hopefully you've got a pretty good network. Hopefully you've got good people surrounding you. And you know what? I know, listen, I get it. You don't want the parents in the facility looking over your shoulder while you're working with that kid, but that kid's dad may have done this already. That kid's dad might be worth, $500 million. So, you need to be mindful of your network and communicate with these people and figure out, how they can help you, how you can help them. That's one of the funniest things about baseball facilities, that, through COVID, a lot of the parents got kicked out of the buildings. I don't know if you remember that. And a lot of people kind of like that. And they were like, oh, I like parents not coming in here for obvious reasons, right? Breathing down their neck while their kid's trying to hit. But man, let's get those parents back in the fold. Let's get the parents, figuring out where they can be helpful. And this is one of those places, because sometimes you don't know who. You might have a parent sitting there right now who wants to be this batting cage sponsor, and stroke you a pretty good check. So yeah, that's my final tip. You guys running these facilities and teams with 100, 200, 500 players. It's keep those lines of communications open, keep that network flowing, because those are the type of people that'll prop you up when you go to do something on a big scale like this. So, Greg, I appreciate you coming over here and doing this, a little bit of a high-level talk on, charitable giving foundations. Again, it's ReinhardtFamilyFoundation.org, and I'll put the links when this goes up. Everything will be at playinschool.com/GRB.
I appreciate you having me. It's great.
Hey, don't hang up. I'm gonna stop the recording there, but don't hang up.